So this is the first time in human history that we're growing enough food to feed every person on this planet nearly 2 times over.
We have set up this amazing system that creates an abundance of food where you can go into a supermarket any time of the year and get a fresh peach. And a product of that is that a lot of that food is not getting put into that system.
1/3 of all the food that we grow in the world goes to waste.
20 to 30 billion pounds of fresh and quality produce don't ever make it off of farms in the United States alone.
And so now the question is, can we successfully get this to people such that there's not hunger in this world?
The abundance is the opportunity that we have. My name is Ben Collier. I'm co-founder and co-CEO at Farmlink.
I'm James Knopf. I'm co-founder and co-CEO of Farmlink.
My name is Aiden Riley. I am a co-founder and head of partnerships at Farmlink. The Farmlink Project is a nonprofit, and our goal is to rescue surplus produce from farms all around the United States and get it to food banks and communities.
We started Farmlink in April of 2020, and there was this really powerful juxtaposition at the time of stories about huge long lines at food banks and at the same time, huge piles of food going to waste due to the halted commercial food industry.
I kind of think in times of crisis is when people come together. You know, we're not gonna be able to solve everything, but what if we could just connect one farm to one food bank? That would be a good thing to do in and of itself.
We picked up the phone, we called organizations and to tell them about our new great idea. And what we learned is that people have been doing this for a long time. There's been food waste in the United States for decades before the pandemic. And rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, we're gonna be the ones who are gonna be the scrappiest and help those who are most marginalized.
So I was calling hundreds of farmers in that time, getting told no a bunch of times until one finally had surplus. As an egg ranch.
10,800 eggs.
At the time we didn't have transportation, so rented a U-Haul truck to drive to the farm and then delivered it to our local food bank, Westside Food Bank.
Once we got those first couple deliveries, then we could get the message out saying, hey, we've moved 10,000 eggs. We found a big truck and a farmer who will trust us. We've moved 40,000 pounds of onions. We blasted that out and told people, this is what we're doing. We want to get your produce off your farm and get it to people who need it. Within a couple months, farmers were calling us rather than us having to call them and get hung up on. I'm always surprised when I see like one pallet, which sounds so small to us when we're dealing with it on our computer screens, and then you look at this and you're like, this is the most carrots I've ever seen in my life.
Could never eat this many
Yeah.
carrots. Yeah. When we think about this abundance, it's not just about where the food ends up, it's all the stops along the way where the food is grown, cleaned and packed, distributed, getting to retail and restaurants, and then into people's homes. And we're really focused on those early stages where food is currently being lost. This is a standard pallet of carrots, and they're 50-pound bags, as you can see. So one truckload from Farmlink might have as many as 26 pallets of produce like this. And that's why we rely on organizations like Westside, who can take a 50-pound bag of carrots and mix it with a variety of other types of produce and shelf-stable products, and hopefully protein as well, that then actually creates a meal, creates something that can really sustain a family. A lot of food waste is the expectations of what this food has to look like. 50 million pounds of bananas went to waste in Mexico because a storm yielded these brown spots on the bananas, where cosmetically, if you peeled them, they were perfect.
It's not just a moral tragedy that 1/3 of all the food that we grow is going to waste, it's also an environmental one. If food waste was a country, it would be the 3rd largest emitter of greenhouse gases, behind only the US and China.
When you send organic matter like food to a landfill, it decomposes improperly. It releases a lot of methane, which is way more potent than carbon dioxide when it comes to heating up the atmosphere. Over the last 2.5 years, what we've calculated is we've rescued about 100 million pounds of CO2 equivalent from going to the atmosphere in the form of methane.
You have all this need that's not being addressed. You have this moral issue of, wow, we're throwing away this food, and the fact that it's causing all of this environmental damage. And we felt that those 3 factors meant, hey, this is something to focus on, not just for the pandemic, but for long after.
I called Aiden a couple weeks in and I said, what is our goal here? And I remember you saying, oh, I'll feel good when we reach 1 million pounds of food. And like 3 weeks later, we hit 1 million pounds, and we called each other and we're like, we haven't even started this. We're closing in on our 100 millionth pound of food.
Working with farmers definitely changed the way that I see food. I grew up in Los Angeles my whole life. There's a major lack of visibility in between, where the food at the grocery store comes from. Farmers are working almost 365 days a year in order to get that food into the grocery store. It's made me more grateful for having both the variety and the quality of stuff that we have in the US, and way more appreciative for farmers who are doing this for us. 40 million Americans don't know where their next meal is going to come from. These are the people that we want to support and alleviate hunger in the household. With a team of 600 volunteers, we move about 1.5 million pounds of food a week all over the United States, Canada, and Mexico. It's incredibly motivating to create a system where we can get everyday people who want to help one truck at a time.